Hello again, and welcome to this special edition of Astronomy Toronto. My name is Randy Attwood. I'm the host of Roger's monthly astronomical news magazine. Well, today we're down here on location at the waterfront by Queens Quay to talk about a special astronomical event that's happening very soon. That is on May 30th, Wednesday. There will be a partial eclipse of the sun visible from here in Toronto. So in the next few minutes, we're going to be looking at and talking about what eclipses are, what we'll be able to see from here in Toronto, and how can we safely look at a partial eclipse of the sun, because of course we all know it's very dangerous to look at the sun at any time. Well, first, what is an eclipse? Well, we must remember that the moon is circling the Earth once a month. Now, on special occasions, usually a couple times a year, the moon passes in front of the sun. So from here down on Earth, when we look up at the sun, we can see the moon slowly moving across in front of the sun. And we see the black orb eating more and more of the sun, and this lasts for about a few hours. Now, there are three types of eclipses. The first is a partial eclipse, and we have a slide here of a partial eclipse of the sun seen a few years ago. What we can see is the moon, the black circular orb, cutting into the sun. This is more or less what we'll see from Toronto on May 30th. Now, there are other types of eclipses. The second eclipse is a total eclipse of the sun. This is where the moon covers up the sun 100%. That is, the moon totally blots out the sun from our view here on Earth, and we don't see the sun for up to a few minutes in length of time. Now, this won't be happening this time round. The last total eclipse of the sun was a few years ago, but we won't be seeing a total eclipse this time. A third type of an eclipse is what's called an annular eclipse. And what an annular eclipse is when the moon in its orbit is just a bit farther away so that it appears smaller to us than the sun. So when it's totally right in the middle of the sun, there's still a small ring of sunlight around. And we have a picture of an annular eclipse here taken a few years ago. Now, actually, the eclipse on May 30th is an annular eclipse, but we won't see the moon right in the middle of the sun like this. That will be seen in the United States, in the southeast U.S. What we'll be seeing is a partial eclipse. About 81% of the sun will be covered by the moon. And we have a slide taken from a few years ago showing about this phase, about an 81% eclipse sun. And this is more or less what we'll see around midday on Wednesday, May 30th. So how can we safely look at this partial eclipse of the sun? Well, it's a very good question, because right now this sun is giving me a lot of trouble, and I'm not even looking straight at it. I'm sure the people driving westbound on the Gardiner tonight need a good pair of sunglasses, and just for a few seconds it's very, very difficult to take a look. So you can imagine what it would be like to look at the sun for any length of time. The problem is not that the fact that the sun is very bright, but the fact that the heat builds up inside your eye when you stare at the sun for more than 10 or 15 seconds and actually cooks the cells on your retina, meaning these cells are no longer useful and you get permanent damage to the eye. So what we're going to want to have to do is block out that heat and even block out the light. Now, the reason that you don't feel pain when you stare at the sun is because there are no nerves in your eye, so you can't tell that something bad is happening. Now, during an eclipse, the radiation coming from the sun, the light and heat, and all the radiation is just the same as any other day. Right now, I'd be crazy to stare at the sun for any length of time, but if there was an eclipse on, I would have a reason to do so. And that's why accidents occur. So what we're going to have to do is figure out how can we block out the light and block out the heat and protect our eyes but still watch the eclipse. Well, there's one easy way, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Well, this is really all you need to see the eclipse of the sun on May 30th. What I have here are two simple shirt cardboards, and I've cut a hole in one and placed some aluminum foil over it. Now, what I've got is a pin, a safety pin, and make a simple pinhole in the middle of the aluminum foil. Now, holding them like this with a certain distance, and what you're going to be able to see is a round circle in the middle of that shirt cardboard, and that is the image of the sun. Now, we can't see anything different about this image right now because there's no eclipse going on. But once the eclipse starts, you're going to see that circle get smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is a really simple thing to do. Took me just a few seconds to do that right now. Now, if you have a bit more time, there are more sophisticated pinhole cameras that you can make, and I've made one before, and I'll just get that. This is the Deluxe Solar Eclipse Viewer. It's a simple shoebox, and what I've done is cut a hole in the end here where I've scotch taped some aluminum foil, and again in the middle you place your pinhole, and inside what I've got is some white paper. So the light travels through the pinhole and onto the white paper, and to take a look at the image I've cut a little trap door in the side, so when I point it at the sun I can look in onto the piece of paper where it's nice and dark, and yes, I can see the sun's image down there. Now the bigger the box, the bigger the image you're going to get. So if you can put a few boxes together and point it up at the sun, you can get a nice large image of the eclipse. What I have here now is the next step up in making a solar eclipse viewer. What you need to make this viewer is a pair of binoculars. And as you can see, I'm getting two very nice images of the sun, and they're a lot bigger than what we would have with the pinhole camera. So the important thing is not to look through the binoculars, but to project the image of the sun. Actually, you get two images onto a piece of cardboard like this, and you'll be able to watch the eclipse. We have a slide here of a person using binoculars viewing an eclipse, and you can see a crescent sun there on his clipboard, and actually you can use a small telescope in the same way. During the February 1979 eclipse, this small telescope was used to get very nice images of a crescent sun during the eclipse. Well, this is the only real safe way to directly view the eclipse. What I've got here is a piece of number 14 welder's glass, and you can get this at any welder's supply store in the city for about $2. Now they're going to ask why number 14, because it's a very, very dark filter. You can tell them that you want to look at the sun. They'll think you're kind of crazy. But anyway, this is a beautiful, you get a beautiful green image of the sun when you use this, and it's perfectly safe. And this eclipse, you know, it's not going to be it'll last for a couple hours, so you can pass it around and everyone can have a good view of the sun during the actual eclipse phase. Now behind me I have a telescope, and on it there is another type of filter, and these filters are made especially for telescopes. This is a piece of glass which has been specially treated to cut out most of the sun's harmful radiation. And what we did earlier is we put it on the video camera, and here in this videotape you can see the view that we got, a nice view of the sun, perfectly safe to look at, and this is how people with telescopes get a good view of the eclipse and get some good photographs of it. Now the main thing to remember is that sunglasses, smoked glass, any other types of filters are unsafe, and you're really taking chances of doing serious damage to your eyes. So if you don't have binoculars or a telescope that you can project the image onto a piece of paper, make one of the solar viewers, the pinhole cameras, and leave these inside during the eclipse, or at least don't stare at the sun for any amount of time with them. Now, what are we going to see in the sky using these viewers? Well, I've made up a bit of a graphic here, and as you can see, we're going to see quite a bit of the sun blocked out by the moon. The eclipse will start at about 20 after 11 in the morning, and the first graphic shows what the moon will look like. It'll be coming in from the bottom right-hand corner, and about 11:45, this is what we'll see, just a small part of the sun blocked out by the moon. But an hour later, at 12:47, we'll be at maximum eclipse, and that is 81% of the sun covered by the moon. By about 2 o'clock, most of the eclipse will be over. The moon will continue moving from right to left, and a few minutes after this shot, about 20 after 2, the eclipse will be over for Toronto. Now there are other things that you can look at during the eclipse, not only at the sun, but get underneath a maple tree or an oak tree and look on the ground and see if you can see during the eclipse itself little crescents on the ground. And what's happening is the leaves themselves are acting as pinhole cameras, so you can see thousands and thousands of small little crescents on the ground. That's one thing to look at. Another thing are the animals. It might get a bit dark here. Not very dark. You might even not notice it. More or less, if it's perfectly clear in Toronto at maximum eclipse, it'll appear as if it's an overcast day. So it'll be interesting to see if the birds start chirping or if any of the animals begin to do any things, maybe preparing for night. So that's all we have for now about the partial eclipse, due Wednesday, May 30th. If you're down by Nathan Phillips Square, down by City Hall, or around the Mount McLaughlin Planetarium, around the noon hour during the eclipse, we'll have telescopes set up there. Members of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada and the McLaughlin Planetarium staff will have several telescopes set up so that you can get a good, safe view of the eclipse as it happens. And people will be there to answer any questions you may have. About 50 members of the Toronto Centre of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada are planning to travel down to Virginia, or in the Petersburg area, to view the annular phase of this eclipse. We hope to have many pictures and some video of the eclipse itself on the next edition of Astronomy Toronto. That'll be aired Thursday, June 7th at 8 p.m. here on Rogers. If you want a bit more information on this eclipse, there's a phone number that you can call. It's 978-5399. So again, my name's Randy Attwood, and thanks very much for watching this small bit on the partial eclipse. So until next time, safe viewing, clear skies, and we'll see you next time.